Hello everyone, this is Sam I Am from Iraq Currency Watch. Hope you're doing well today. You know, a lot of people who believe in the cabal, the collapse of the dollar, and the demise of the Federal Reserve, and the coming global currency reset have cited World Bank whistleblower Karen Hudes as their source for a lot of their information. So I thought it would be a good idea to take a look at Ms. Hudes to gain some insight into what she's all about. Let's begin with this interview clip where she explains what happens with our tax dollars.
When you fill out your taxes and you send a check one place and you send the tax form another place, the check that you send goes directly to the Federal Reserve, and they take that check and they send it to the United Kingdom, and the UK keeps, not the government, the UK banksters keep 40%, and then they send 60% on to the Jesuits in the Vatican.
So according to Ms. Hudes, all of our income tax dollars go directly to the Federal Reserve, where they are then forwarded to the UK. 40% of those dollars are retained by banksters in the UK, and the remaining 60% are then sent to the Jesuits in the Vatican. She goes on to babble about war reparations being paid to the UK, who owes money to the Vatican from a war debt incurred in 1200 AD, as a way of explaining why our tax revenues are divvied up this way. And since all of our more than $3 trillion of income tax revenue ends up in the UK and the Vatican, how in the world are we able to fund our government?
Wow. Now, how are we financing our government? We're selling drugs. We're selling the drugs that we grow in Afghanistan. We never had any poppies there until the war in Afghanistan.
You heard right. Drugs. Over $3 trillion annually from poppies in Afghanistan. That's a lot of poppies. So now, folks, let's listen to Karen's explanation of why the CIA was created.
When the CIA was set up, it was set up with a special job to guard the world's gold. There's a lot more gold than people know about 3 or 4 times what people are officially told.
Right.
And a lot of this gold is on deposit all over the world. There's 170,000 tons in the Bank of Hawii. That's more than people say is in existence on Earth already. Yeah?
Right.
And the CIA was set up to guard that gold.
So she says that there's about 170,000 tons of gold in the Bank of Hawaii, but she offers no evidence to back that claim. Then she says that the CIA was initially set up to guard that gold. Again, no documentation. This is what we refer to as a BWO, a belief without evidence. As Carl Sagan famously quipped, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. With no evidence, it's probably best to just file these claims away until some evidence surfaces. Now, let's listen to Ms. Hudes discussing why Obama is going along with the Jesuits' agenda.
Is Obama falling in line with the whole agenda, or is he pushing at it in any way? What's your take on that?
Unfortunately, he's not in a position. His wife is being blackmailed.
How so?
Because she has fallen for some what they call honey traps.
Wow.
In a hotel with 2-way mirrors. She has been compromised.
I know what a honey trap is. Wow. That's...
And there are other things involving him. You know, his mother was a CIA agent, and he was raised in a way that that made him a person who would trap people with honey traps. That was his mother's job in the CIA, to entrap people in hotels.
So now we learn that Michelle Obama has fallen into some honey traps in hotels with 2-way mirrors, and that Obama's mother actually worked for the CIA, where she entrapped people in this way, and that's where Obama learned it. But she doesn't explain how Obama's hands would be tied as a result of Michelle Obama's being caught in a honey trap of Barack Obama's making. Next, we learn about an underground nuclear detonation 600 miles off the coast of South Carolina.
A couple of weeks ago, I believe it was the 8th of October, there was supposed to be a nuclear bomb detonated on South Carolina. And 2 Army generals made sure that that bomb went off the coast, 600 miles off the coast, and detonated undersea. And those military officers were fired. And now, at this point, there are about 180 generals and brass that are being fired. And these are the people that are protecting the citizens of the United States. And that's why they're being removed.
So now we're expected to believe that a nuke went off and 180 military leaders were fired because of this, and yet none of it was reported anywhere. At this point, the guy interviewing her is obviously having a bad day at the office. Now let's watch a clip from another interview where Ms. Hudes describes the true powers that be who are pulling the strings.
Many of these super elite organizations that operate in secrecy. So I know I've named a few already, but if you could help us elaborate on these points, who are the people pulling the strings?
Well, do you remember when there were ghettos and you had something called a Judenrat that were the ones that would draw up the lists of the Jews that were going to get exported the next day? Do you remember how that system worked?
Well, it was a little before my time, but history would dictate what happened in those ghettos. So elaborate, please.
These were traitors to their people who were helping because they thought they were going to save themselves. That's maybe why they did that, but it doesn't matter what their motives were. They were doing the work against their people. Now, think of this as an elaboration on a larger scale, and what we're dealing with actually is humanity and the elite, the secret societies, the Vatican. They're traitors to humanity because the one at the very core that's pulling the strings is a different species. They're not the human race. They're called homo capensis. They have been on Earth together with humanity for before this ice age. And the reason I know about this is because I was trying to help out a movie producer who couldn't get his movie. It was called The Banksters Made Off with America, Edmund Drille. And he introduced me to his network of whistleblowers. One of the people in that network is a neurologist who went to Yale Medical School and was retired, and he was trying to find out what was at the very core of all of this corruption. And
so you mentioned this species, an additional species of humans, or
no, they're not humans. They are so distinct from humans that if they were to mate with humans, their offspring would not be fertile.
Now, are you speaking of the biblical Nephilim is an entity that people have discussed and tried to understand for millennia, and that is the race of offspring of humans and the fallen angels from.
No, these are not angels. These are not spiritual.
Well, the Nephilim themselves were the offspring of the fallen angels and humanity. Is this the same
They
species?
are not fallen angels. Mm-hmm. They are critters. People who I am getting emails from saw them the day before. They look just like human beings, except they have these big skulls. And that is why in the Vatican, you see these crazy meters, is what they're called. And that's why the very first Jew, Moses, wore one of those things, because he was one of those homo capensis as well. We have DNA samples of them.
That's right, they're critters from outer space who came here thousands of years ago with oversized skulls like the coneheads. In fact, Moses was one of them. And how does she know this?
And the reason we know this is because it was in the papyri of one of the pyramids. I found this out from from the internet.
She learned it from the internet, of course. Now it all makes sense. The look on the interviewer's face is priceless. Now, if this all sounds hard to believe, there's a good reason. This woman is 100% certifiably Looney Tunes. If you're basing your worldview on anything she has said in any shape, form, or fashion, you'd best reconsider. Thanks for watching.